Tamil political parties in Sri Lanka are unable to go any further than calling for a very severely constrained form of provincial government at best. Otherwise, they offend against the Sixth Amendment. It's interesting, and we've seen this in media after media and speech after speech of political leaders in Sri Lanka over the years as well. They've used this situation where the diaspora can call for or discuss self-determination, but it's illegal to within Sri Lanka, and they've used that to claim it's only the Tamils and the diaspora who support self-determination and not Tamils within Sri Lanka itself. It's a bizarre, tortuous logic that's been employed. So therefore, I think many of us have come to the conclusion, if there's to be a free determination of the future for the Tamils on the basis of collective decision making, it's imperative that the Sixth Amendment is repealed. And so that Tamils in Sri Lanka can come together freely and openly to express their political aspirations. Also, there's many Tamils who have fled their homeland and come here as a result of the armed conflict, and many of you, as you know, all of you have offered support back to families and friends and communities out there, rebuilding schools, hospitals that have been destroyed by the security forces, supporting war victims, war widows in particular. But Tamils who go back from here to Sri Lanka are always wary of what they say and what they do in case they can be accused of offending against the Sixth Amendment. And in that way they feel constrained in their activities and their own freedom of expression. There's another reason why Britain and other Western states should bear pressure on Sri Lankan government to repeal the Sixth Amendment. During the armed conflict, most of you will recall, the Sri Lankan government promised India and other Western countries that it would take steps to find a political solution that would go beyond the provincial council system created by the 13th Amendment that Siobhan has mentioned. That was a clear commitment that the system of devolution would continue or be developed at pace. The provincial council system, as you know, that was created from the Indo-Lanka Accord that was agreed, actually devolves very little power to the provinces. 15 years after the end of the armed conflict, Sri Lanka hasn't taken, as far as we can see, just standing back objectively, any real tangible steps to find a political solution beyond the 13th Amendment and the constrained powers that they provide at the local council level. And there are a number of examples now. Siobhan mentioned one of them, in which Sri Lankan's government departments have executed policies, but the local communities have not, through the structures that are available to them, have not been able to seek redress or hold them to account. And the example that Siobhan raised, I think, is the one that actually many people find offensive, which is the way the Sri Lankan government's Department of Archaeology, in the name of archaeological excavations, have appropriated Tamil places of worship and they've converted them into synagogues, temples. So it's effectively that Tamils don't have any form of real self-government in their own homeland, and so limited are their powers, they can't even have the powers to protect their places of worship. As we know, the Sri Lankan judiciary is politicised, and the Tamils are also unable to seek redress from the courts themselves. And where there's been examples of Tamil judges, for example, seeking to uphold the rule of law, they've been subject to death threats and intimidation as a result of that. Other areas in which, because of the lack of local powers and local resources, there's been an inability of local communities to fend off the Sri Lankan security forces, both in terms of their excesses, but also in terms of their criminality as well, and the association that they have with drug use and gang violence within the Tamil homeland itself. Again, the issue here is, even where Tamils have sought to argue for greater power at the local level, access to law and order, access to resources to enable to exercise their rights. That's then interpreted as part of the Sixth Amendment and some form of first step towards the advocacy of self-determination. So there's this circular logic that's taken place in which the Tamil community is actually trapped. During the armed conflict and during the Norwegian brokered peace negotiations between the Sri Lankan government and the LTTE, the international community, in particular the United Kingdom, US and Norway, the Tamils were promised if they abandoned the armed struggle, pursue their struggle for the right to self-determination through peaceful and democratic means, they would receive international recognition and support. Actually, Peter Hain, who was the Labour Foreign Minister at the time, I think gave us an excellent quote I'll draw upon. He said, "I'm convinced that both the government's insistence upon the territorial sovereignty of the whole island and the LTT's objective of autonomy can be secured. But for that to happen, the shooting must stop and talking must start. This is a war neither side can win militarily. It's a conflict that cannot be resolved without elected leaders being prepared to sit down with people who may well be responsible for barbarous assassinations, but who do have a legitimate political programme which needs to be engaged, not shunned. It took far too long for us to learn that lesson in Britain, and far too many lives were lost as a consequence. Equally, the LTTI, like the IRA, need to acknowledge that whilst the Tamil Kingdom constitutionally split from the rest of the island, will not receive recognition by Europe, the USA, or indeed India, the principle of self-determination and control over most, if not all, of the key policies affecting daily life would be supported by the international community." It's 23 years since that statement was made, and yet, to be frank, there's been little political space that's been achieved for the Tamils to freely express their political aspirations or achieve the right to self-determination. In fact, that whole dialogue as a result of the amendment has been closed down. So therefore I come to the same conclusion as Siobhan, that it is imperative now that Britain takes the lead on this, that we takes the lead on prevailing upon the Sri Lankan government to repeal the Sixth Amendment and allow Tamils within Sri Lanka, not just the diaspora, to come together and express the political solution that they desire. We want, exactly as Peter Hain said, we want that dialogue to take place and to do it in a peaceful manner to ensure justice for all concerned. I don't think the Sixth Amendment was and continues to be in the spirit of the peace agreement that was signed, and it was also, I think, hindering the future of Sri Lanka itself, not just the Tamil community. And that's why we feel that repealing the Sixth Amendment won't just open up the political space for Tamils in Sri Lanka and Western countries to freely express their political aspirations, but it will also allow them, I think, to have faith in that right of self-determination, whether in the form of maximum autonomy and self-government in their homeland, or where this fails, at least an internationally recognised liberal democratic state of their own that can be secured through peaceful and democratic means. And that's all we're asking for, the repeal of the Sixth Amendment, so that we can actually then move forward in terms of that peaceful dialogue to achieve the aspirations of the Tamil people. I just repeat in conclusion, self-determination we consider as a human right. We respect it across the world, we campaign for it across the world. And as part of the peace process, we gave assurances that the Tamil people would have the support in securing it. That's what we need to do, and that's the demand that we'll be placing on all political parties in this coming general election, so that we achieve a government that will secure that.